That animal over there in the back, that's the animal with the mycoplasma, that had the mycoplasma back in the day. And this is the animal that lets me pet him. I don't really want to get too close to the animals, but if you take a look at them, you can kind of get an idea for the size of the animal, right? And I would say that that animal probably weighs about 5 1/4. You know, that's the animal that I can wrap my arms around, and I would say that animal weighs about 5 1/4. So you can see he's a little bit smaller than the rest of them, right? Like if you take a look at this one, he's you know, this one is probably a little bit bigger than he is. Right, I have a bunch of animals over here, a bunch of the big animals gathered up on these 2 troughs over here. You know, I got, you know, this one big, you know, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 animals right here, and he'd be the 9th, and this be the 10th animal. You know, and animals that are about this size right here, you know, they're probably just you know, a little bit smaller than he is. So, you know, like this one and that one, you know, and you know, so, and that one over there, right? I mean, so you know, but that's the animal. That's him over there. That's the one that had the mycoplasma. So, you know, that one's a bit smaller. But that's the animal that had the mycoplasma back, you know, a few months ago, about 3 months ago, 2 months ago. And, you know, that's the animal that'll let me walk up to him and grab his head. And I can wrap my arms around him, and he won't run away or anything, and he doesn't care. And I took measurements on him, but you know, back in the day, I used to take measurements on my cattle about every 2 weeks, because I was looking to keep track of the daily gains, right? I was looking to keep track of the daily gains. I was utilizing different feedstuffs. I was sourcing different feedstuffs. I was researching different feedstuffs, and I would feed my animals different feedstuffs. And while I was feeding them I would keep track of their weight gain. And you know, and you know, so that's how I used to do it back in the day. But I don't do that anymore, simply because I already have a lot of data. I have a lot of data. You know, like if I feed corn and I feed soybeans, right? If I get a mixture of soybeans and corn, and I feed it to the animal, I know that the animal will put on about 75 pounds a month. I did that for about 5 months, right? I fed my animals soybeans and corn a couple of years ago when the price of hay crashed. When the you know, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago or so, the price of hay absolutely collapsed. And when the price of hay collapsed, you know, I could buy you know, and they grow a lot of soybeans in the northeast a corner of Texas. They grow a lot of soybeans, and so I was able to find myself a whole bunch of soybeans. And I fed the corn. I fed the soybean with a little bit of corn, and you know, that did I did good on that. You know, I made money on that. But you know, when I was doing that, I used to take the measurements of my animals manually. I used to walk up to my animals and I used to wrap a tape measure around their body. All right, and then I used to take the measurement from their front leg to their rear end. And then there's a formula on the internet that you can use to take to get the estimate weight of the animal. But if you take a look at the animals, you know, any animal that's about that size over there, you know, the one in the very back over there, that, you know, that's effectively that animal right there is probably about 5 1/4. Okay. And so if you see an animal like this and he's a little bit bigger than him over there, right? I mean, this animal's probably closer to 600. All right. So, you know, I got another animal over there that's about his size. I got another animal standing next to him that's his size. And if you take a look across their backs, it's real easy to see where the big animals are, right? Like if you take a look across their back, like you can tell that this animal is bigger than this one, right? It's very easy, all right? You know, and then once you kind of have a gauge for what the animal, like what one of your animals weighs, you know, you can kind of just, kind of figure it out. I mean, it's not rocket science, right? I mean, this animal is smaller than that one, right? This one is bigger than that one. This one's about the same size as that one, right? It's not hard, all right? It's not complicated. I mean, it's not like some 4-dimensional calculus, all right? And so, you know, I got this animal right here, definitely bigger than that one. So, you know, I would probably have, you know, like if I was going to liquidate at 650, I would probably be liquidating next month. But if I liquidate at 650 and I buy them at 2 1/4, then I buy 2 for every 1 that I sell. And, you know, right now, the whole thing about my situation, I was thinking about this, you know, I was considering going to the sale barn next week to buy more cattle. And I might do it, but I might not do it. The thing is that, you know, I'm already in a situation where the earnings of my business is so high for the year that it's actually becoming very difficult my tax situation is becoming pretty difficult. I have to find a way to invest a lot of capital, and and in all honesty, making an extra, let's say that I wait 1 month, right? If I wait 1 month before I go and I buy more cattle, it doesn't make any difference on my balance sheet. It doesn't, it does make a slight difference, but the amount of money that I can make by doing that is not really worth it. It's not really worth the money. All right, me going out of my way for an extra 5 or 10 grand a year is not going to do anything. All right, I'm not gonna, and here's the thing. If I make an extra $10,000 with my tax situation where it is right now, I really only made like an extra 6,500. All right, because I really only made an extra, 5,000, because I have to pay taxes on the money. All right, unless I find a way to reinvest the capital, I'm gonna have to pay taxes on it, and a lot of taxes. My income is very high. All right, I am making an astronomical sum of money. And I was actually thinking about this, that making it, it's not really worth the trouble. And so it's like, even if I just wait 1 more month, but even if I wait 1 more month and I liquidate at 650, I would, even with just the money that I make, like these are the animals that I got right now, right? Even with just the money that I make, let's say that I have 10 animals ready for market next month, I would have to buy like 35 animals next month instantaneously just to reinvest the money that I make. I wouldn't be using any debt. I would just take the profits from my business and I would put it back into my business. And if I did that, I would have to buy like 35 animals and I would be selling 10. All right, and where am I, if I bought 35 animals, I would have like 60 or 70 animals on this 10.5 acre field. And so, and next month it's going to get blazing hot. Starting about next week, it's going to be a full-on sunshine, and it's going to be triple digit temperatures. And so, I gotta, and I don't really want to, I'm not looking to grow my business in the scorching heat. All right, I'm not gonna expand my business while it's burning up outside. And and so, I'm kind of in it. I know that this is like whatever, but I'm just gonna be honest about it. And it is what it is. I've taken a look at my balance sheet. I would consider that my herd is stabilized. As of today, my herd is stabilized. And I would anticipate that I make about a 75% profit in the next 4 months. And it'll actually be more than that if I reinvest my earnings. But if I left my balance sheet exactly the way it is right now, and I liquidated at 800 pounds instead of 650, I would still produce a profit of about 75% over the next 4 months, and that would be from a baseline of 50 animals. All right, so from 50, I would make it a profit of 75%. I would anticipate that I could probably buy about 80 animals. And that would be just from me taking the money that my business makes and putting it back into my business. And it'll probably be more than that, okay? I'm just going to say 75% as a very, low ball estimate. And and when I take a look at it, the animals that are this size right here, they'll be ready for market in a month. They'll be at least 650 pounds in a month. And if I sell a 650 pound animal, right, I've always said that I raise my animals to a commercial standard. And when you raise your animals to a commercial standard, you're effectively going to get commodity prices for your animals, right? Cattle are commodities, and if you have a commercially raised animal, right, like when you take a look at my animals are effectively commercially viable animals, and I raise them to a commercial standard. That means I'll get commodity prices for them, right? And so, if I, and I've always said that the whole thing about the business plan is that I'm effectively a commodity investor, right? That's effectively what I am. I value add commodities and I trade commodities. All right, that's effectively just that's what I do in terms of a broader perspective on my business. And I raise my animals to a commercial standard, and I raise commercial animals, okay? And so, you know, if I just follow my business plan and I do it word for word, I don't change anything, I just legitimately just continue forward for 4 months, I will legitimately make enough money to more than double the size of my, you know, I'm just going to say 75%, at least 75%. And I will probably be liquidating at 800 pounds and not 650. So I'll end up making more money per animal. But, you know, the big problem right now is what, you know, why would I, you know, I have to find a way to reinvest this capital. That's the big puzzle for the end of the year. For the next 5-6 months, the biggest thing that I have to solve is where do I reinvest this money? I am already up to the eyeballs in money. All right, I am up to the eyeballs in money all the time. I have to find a way to reinvest this capital. All right, and you know, and I've even been thinking about it. I may not buy animals next week, simply because bringing home 5 animals, you know, it's gonna start getting scorching hot next week. It will start getting scorching hot next week, and even if I bring home 5 animals, I mean, it's not gonna make a difference for the amount of money that I make. It's not really going to do anything. It's not really going to matter. All right, the amount of money is going to be negligible. I'm already in a situation where my tax burdens are pretty significant. So, you know, if I buy the animals later in the year, then, you know, maybe I don't have to sell them until next year. I'll have to figure it out. But, you know, I may not even bring home animals at the end of the I may not even bring home animals next week. But if I don't bring home animals next week, then what's going to happen? I am effectively up to the eyeballs in money all the time. My assets are appreciating. I've taken a look at my assets, right? I have appraised my assets. I've taken a look at my balance sheet. I would determine that my herd is stable, right? I have a baseline of 50, and I have determined that my herd is stable. And, you know, in terms of the appreciation of my assets, I believe that I will make something around 75% over the net positive of 75%. And that is from a baseline of 50 animals. I will make a net positive of about 75%, probably more, over the next 4 months. Because all of my animals will not be going to the market at the same time, right? I have animals that are, you know, that size. I have animals that are, you know, I have animals that are this size right here, like that size right there. And then I have animals that are that size right there, right? And so effectively, you know, maybe I sell, you know, 10 at a time. Maybe I sell 12 at a time. You know, I won't be selling them all at the same time. And if I stagger it out and I reinvest my earnings as I go, realistically, we're talking about more than 75%. All right, so I got to figure out what I'm going to do. All right, one of my biggest problems right now in the cattle business, when you're taking a look at me running my business, when you're watching me run my business, you have to understand that one of the biggest problems that I am having right now is that my cattle business is making such a large amount of money that I am having a difficult time reinvesting it. Legitimately, that is one of the biggest problems that I am having right now, is that my cattle business makes such a large amount of money that I'm having a difficult time reinvesting it. If I was going to reinvest my capital over just the next 2 months, I would have to, over the next 3 months, I would have to buy like 85 animals. And that would be with zero debt. All right, you know, I have to figure something out. All right, and, you know, but if, you know, and I was thinking, you know, well, then maybe I should just go and do something, right? I mean, you know, I don't know. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'll just go and buy myself a new truck. I don't know. You know, what am I going to do? You know, I got to figure something out. You know, my animals, you know, I probably won't be buying any animals next week. I probably won't. You know, I'll think about it, but I probably won't. You know, because the extra 5 animals is not going to make a difference. All right, the extra amount of money that I make is not going to be any different. I mean, not significantly. I'm already in a situation where I'm having, you know, there is no reason for me to invest more capital, or excuse me, there is no reason for me to bring home more money. You know, but I have assets that are appreciating. I will have to force liquidate. Even if I don't want to, I will have to force liquidate. And then I am disproportionately just, you know, massively loaded with money. And then what do, right? I have to figure it out. I have to find some way to invest about 400% more money by the end of the year. I have to figure it out, or I can pay 35% of my money in taxes. All right, that's the situation that I am looking at right now. Either I find a way, I have to invest at least 250% more money. If I invest 250% more money, that will take my taxes very, very low. But realistically, if I was going to follow my business plan, I would probably have to invest closer to 400% more money. If I was just going to follow my business plan. And the whole thing about the business plan, is that, like me, when I go and I invest 150% of my earnings, right? I'm not leveraging myself to the eyeballs to do it, right? Right? I have a balance sheet. The balance sheet has been appraised. I have determined that the balance sheet is stable and appreciating, and at that point I leverage against the number of assets that I have, and that causes me to invest more than 100% of my income, right? And so it's not like I'm even putting myself at risk by investing a large amount of money. If anything, I'm more at risk of losing money if I don't invest the money, right? This is something I talk about in terms of one of the things that, in terms of how do I see it. This is one of the things that I talk about. I'm actually more at risk of losing money if I don't invest my capital, because I will have to pay taxes. All right, I will have to pay taxes if I do not invest my capital. All right, and so, that's the big problem right now. I am effectively always up to the eyeballs in money. And it's actually becoming very difficult for me to reinvest my capital. That's honest to God the truth. My assets are appreciating. I'm already sitting on capital. My assets are appreciating. All right, I could go and fill up my preconditioning pens twice and buy a load of grain. Right, and and my assets are still appreciating. Even I have to I got to see what I'm gonna do, because bringing home an extra 3 or 5 animals is not gonna do anything. It's not going to do anything in terms of the grand scheme of things. So why would I go out of my way to do that? I might as well just go on a hunting trip or something. Right? I might as well just go on a hunting trip or something, or buy myself a new truck, or do something else, because it's not worth the money's not going to do anything, right? It's a very minuscule amount of money. I'm already in a situation where my tax burdens for the year are very high. I already have to reinvest a lot of this capital. I have a lot of capital that I have to reinvest, or I will lose my money anyway due to taxes. So there's no real reason for me to go and buy 5 more animals. It's not going to do anything. And by next week it will get scorching hot outside. Sometime next week it will enter triple-digit temperatures, and we will effectively be, it will be blazing hot outside. And so I got to figure out what I'm going to do with the capital. My assets are still appreciating. I've appraised my assets. I've taken a look at my balance sheet, and even from a baseline of 50 animals, if I just reinvest the money that my business makes, if I just take the money that my business makes over the next 3 or 4 months and I reinvest that money back into my business, I will be able to grow my balance sheet by more than 75%. All right, and I will still have 2 or 3 months before the end of the year, and that growth will be done with 0 leverage. All right, so I got to figure out what I'm going to do. All right, I got to, that's the big problem that I have to solve before the end of the year. I have to find a way to invest drastically more capital, or I can pay 35% of my income in taxes. And as of right now, I am already up to the eyeballs in money. My assets are still appreciating. I'm already at maximum capacity. I got to figure something out. One of the biggest problems that I'm having right now is that I'm legitimately making so much money that I cannot do anything with it. That's one of my biggest problems right now. All right, when you watch me running cattle, when you watch me farming, you have to understand that, that's what you're looking at. This business right now, the way that I do things, the way that I run my business, I make a drastic sum of money. I legitimately end up making more money than effectively anybody on the entire planet. All right, and it's by a lot. And you could be doing anything, and I probably make drastically more money. It doesn't matter what it is. And I know that sounds horrible, but I'm just being honest about it, right? It just is what it is. And, right now, with the way things that are going, I got to figure it out. I make a drastic amount of money. I don't know exactly how much money I make, but I know it's a lot. I'm already up to the eyeballs in money. My assets are still appreciating. I have good assets. I have to figure something out. And this little animal right here, I kind of feel bad for this one because she's so small. The other animals just kind of push her out the way. And so, I'm like, maybe I got to put her in the front. I'll figure it out. She's so small that the other animals push her out the way, but she's still, she's still just kind of okay. She's still kind of okay, but you can tell she's just very small compared to the other ones. And so I'm thinking maybe I put her up in the front or something. But you know, this is the smallest that they get. Animals that are about that size right now, they'll be about 650. They'll be about six. Oh well, this one's a little bit small. You know, well, I mean, maybe about that size of animal. That size of animal over there will be about 6 feet. I'll probably have about 10 animals at about 650 pounds. I'll have about 10 animals at 650 pounds by the beginning of next month. And right now the average weight of the animal that I have brought home is about 225 pounds, because the 12 animals that I brought in the front, I brought them in at 170. And so, you know, if I brought them in at 225 and I sell them at 650, right, I can effectively buy 2 for every 1 that I sell. And so, you know, I've effectively just about doubled my money. If I take them up to 800, I'll just about more than double my money. And, and I'm over, and the thing is that I don't have to sell any more animals. I already have enough money in my bank account. I already have enough money, right? I've sold animals a week ago. I legitimately already have enough money to buy more animals. I can already just fill up my preconditioning pens and I don't have to sell any more animals. All right, and so I got to figure out what I'm going to do, or, I'll be stuck paying, a 35, 40%, 45% of my money in taxes. And so, but that's also one of the things is that, I probably won't be bringing home animals next week. I probably won't. I just don't see a reason to do it. It's not like it's going to make me a lot of money, right? It's not like it's going to make a drastic sum of money. And I got scorching hot temperatures coming in next week. I got to figure out what, but also a little thing about the, but this calf right here, I don't know why she, well, she's eating, but, but when it gets scorching hot outside, when it gets really, really, really hot outside, you can actually take a good look at that animal right now. That's the kind of animal that weighs about 525 right now. So this animal's bigger, that animal maybe about the same size. But when it gets scorching hot outside, you can actually buy unweaned calves for very cheap. When it's scorching hot outside, one of the things about in terms of like a little nuance in the cattle market is that if the weather is ever bad, if it's ever bad weather, whether it's very hot, very cold, very wet, if the weather is bad for any reason, unweaned calves go down in price. Unweaned calves go down in price, sometimes drastically. All right, because the only time that people really want to buy unweaned calves is when the weather is very good and they have, the grass is growing. All right, that's effectively the only time people really go out to the market and buy unweaned calves. If the weather is bad for any reason, if it's blazing hot outside, if it's very wet, if it's very cold, anything like that, unweaned calves go down in value, usually by a lot. Sometimes if you just wait, you can get yourself a couple of very good deals on unweaned calves. And I would anticipate that next week, when it gets blazing hot outside, unweaned calves, you could probably find a couple of good deals on unweaned calves. But I'm not saying go and buy unweaned calves. All right, I'm just saying that will probably happen. And unweaned calves are very difficult, okay? They're very difficult. You really need to understand what you're doing, especially if the weather is bad. But, my whole balance sheet right now, my whole situation right now, the way that my business is looking, I would say that my assets are stabilized. I have a stabilized balance sheet. My entire balance sheet is stable. I doubt I will have any issues with my balance sheet at all, if any. And I have about a 4-month window, maybe even a 5-month window. If I take my animals up to 800 pounds, instead of 650, it might be a 5 or 6 month window where my animals are profitable. My animals will continue to be profitable for about 4 to 6 months, right? Or about 3 to 5 months, something like that. I'll have to sell the bigger ones in 3 months, and I'll have to sell the smaller ones in 5 months. And I wouldn't be selling all of my animals at the same time. When I realize my gains, I will have to reinvest my earnings, or I will be stuck paying a large amount of money in taxes. All right, when I take a look at my balance sheet is stable. I would consider that my balance sheet has been stabilized. I doubt I will have any problems, if at any at all, with these animals. With the animals that I have right now, I will have very, very, very minimal problems. And so, and I anticipate that my balance sheet will appreciate for at least another, 4 or 5 months, something like that. 3 to 5 months, 3, 4, 5 months, something like that. And so, but I got to figure out what I'm going to do, because you have to understand that when I realize my gains, if I just take the money that my business makes and I put it back into my business, I will be able to grow my balance sheet by more than 75% in the next 3 to 4 months. All right. And so I got to figure out what am I going to do, or I will be stuck paying about half of my money in taxes, a third to a half of my money in taxes. But that's one of the biggest problems that I'm having right now with my business, is that this cattle business is making such a large amount of money that I cannot do anything with it. And I'm looking for a way to reinvest more capital by about 250 to 400% more money. All right. And, and I'm already up to the eyeballs in money all the time. I am up to the eyeballs in money all the time, and my money, and that's going to get worse, because if I sit around and I don't do anything, right? I don't sell any animals. I don't buy any animals. I just sit around and I don't do anything. My assets will still continue to appreciate. My assets will still continue to appreciate. My assets will still go up in value. When you take a look at my balance sheet right now, I have determined that my assets are stable, and they will continue to be profitable for at least 3, 4, 5 months. If I sit around and don't do anything, I don't go on a trip to Disneyland. I don't go and buy myself a Lamborghini. I don't go and I don't do anything. I just sit and I wait. I will still make money. All right, I will still make money. And so, I have to figure out what am I going to do. All right, I'm already up to the eyeballs in money. I'm constantly up to the eyeballs in money. Now I have to figure out what am I going to do. All right, if I legitimately sit here and don't do anything for the next month, for the next 2 months, for the next 3 months, up until about 5 months, if I legitimately sit around and don't do anything for the next 5 months, I will still continue to make a drastic sum of money. All right, so I got to figure out what am I going to do. All right, because I need to invest the capital. I need to do something, or by the end of it all, I will have to pay almost half of my money in taxes. But that's what I got going on right now. Okay, my balance sheet is stable. I've appraised my balance sheet. I've taken a look at my balance sheet. I have determined that my assets will be profitable for about the next 3, 4, 5 months. All right, and when the appraisal, or when the appreciation has, when I've effectively hit market weight and I liquidate my animals, I will make enough money to effectively grow my balance sheet by more than 75%. And that would be with zero debt. So that is what I see happening. Okay, that is what I'm looking at when I see this business, and I consider the balance sheet. That is what I'm looking at. These assets are stable. All right, they'll continue to appreciate for another 3, 4, 5 months. Market target weight is somewhere between 650, 800. I'll figure it out. And if I liquidate at 650, 800, something like that, I will, at least make enough money to grow my balance sheet by 75%. All right, and that will take me somewhere between 3, 4, and 5 months. All right, and realistically, I even want to leverage against my earnings. All right, I do want to leverage against my earnings. All right, the amount of money that I'm making is very drastic. I've even, I'm like, maybe I should just go and buy myself a new truck. Maybe I should take a hunting trip or something. I don't know. I gotta figure it out. I gotta, even if I sit around and do nothing else but this for the next month, I will still make a drastic amount of money. Even if I sit around for the next 2 months and do nothing and just do this, I will make a drastic amount of money. I'm already up to the eyeballs in money. My assets will continue to appreciate. All right, so I really got to figure out a way to reinvest my capital. All right, I am making a drastic sum of money. All right, it's a lot. I legitimately made more money farming in my backyard, starting this cattle ranch in my backyard, than effectively anybody on the planet made doing just about anything. Legitimately. All right, this cattle business makes such a large amount of money. I can effectively buy anything on the entire planet. All right, granted that I don't go and buy myself a 3 Lamborghinis, but even if I went and bought myself a Lamborghini, it wouldn't matter. But am I going to buy myself a Lamborghini? No, I'm not. Right, I'm going to go and buy myself a truck. All right, I need a big truck. I need a big truck, and I need a big trailer. I need to be able to move more cattle around at the same time. That'll really help my business. And but even if I do that, I mean, it's like, what, for me to buy a brand new F350 XLT, for me to buy a brand new F350, if I saved money for the next 1 month, if I saved the money for the next month, I would legitimately have enough money to buy the F350. All right, it doesn't matter. And so, but I got to figure out what am I going to do. All right. Because I get money when I trade in my truck. Right. And so I got to figure out what am I going to do. I got to figure out how am I going to invest this capital. My assets are appreciating. I'm already up to the eyeballs in money. I don't have to liquidate any more animals to fill up my preconditioning pens. And by the time my assets have reached market weight, I would anticipate that I have enough capital from just the money that I make in my business. When I reinvest that capital, I will have enough money to grow my business by more than 75%. All right, by the end of the year, I will have more than doubled my income. I can almost guarantee it. All right, so I got to figure out what am I going to do, all right? Or I can pay half of my money in taxes. That's it for me today, YouTube. Have a good one.